Imagine what it's like to be caught in the wild. Your feathers are cut off in that moment so that you can no longer fly in the way that you're used to. You're stuffed into a box, shipped on a plane, shipped overseas somewhere, and end up living life in a cage by yourself.
African grey parrots populations are under threat. They're currently classed as endangered from a conservation perspective. There's a whole range of different elements at play that are causing these declines, but ultimately it is illegal collection for the exotic pet trade that is of primary concern. They used to congregate in numbers of birds in up to 10,000.
Naturally, parrots are social beings. They flock together, they feed together. They will of course find mates freely. Whereas in captivity, these parrots are restricted.
Now we're seeing them gather just in the numbers of hundreds. If nothing is done, there is a real chance that we could lose this really enigmatic and charismatic species.
Journey for African grey parrots, right from the wild during capture to the point when they are finally sold as pets and they are taken into homes, is really horrific.
The methods are incredibly cruel. The first one was the use of glue on sticks. They put the sticks at the top of the tree and they put a lure bird at the top.
The bird hears the distress calls of another member of its flock and instinctively comes down to investigate and to see what is happening. And it really does prey upon their intelligent nature. And that's when that animal also gets caught up in either the glue or the snare or the other contraption that's been put in place to rip them from the wild.
You could see the distress with the bird. It was desperately trying to escape the poacher. So if they've been caught by glue, they'll be pulling the sticks off of the bird, and that will also pull off its feathers, tear them off of the skin of the bird. The other way of doing it, the bird will be taken, the feathers will be cut off, they'll be put in baskets. They will take a machete and they'll take the bird and they'll put them on a stick, or they'll put it on the box, and they'll cut the flight feathers off.
Capture from the wild is just the first of a whole horrible series of steps and will place the animal under extreme trauma.
So firstly, it will be moved in baskets or in crates from where it's been poached to the first holding facility in the local villages. And during this time, it will be starved. This is to sort between the strong and the weak birds, because the traffickers further along the line don't want to export weak birds because they might get a loss from that.
This animal will be stuffed and crammed into some kind of small container or box of some sort with potentially other parrots.
It's a long journey. It's also one of constant movement because traffickers do not want to keep the bird for very long.
The amount of suffering that is involved with the capture and the transport of an African grey parrot is really demonstrated by the mortality rates, the number of animals that die as a result of that process. Conservative estimates have said that around 30% of animals will die before they make it on a plane for international export. Realistically, it could be up to 60% and even 90% of animals that just don't simply survive long enough to make it into somebody's home.
Psychological suffering that these animals endure in that process, if they make it that far, you have to ask yourself for what, right? What is the point of causing that suffering for that animal? And the answer is there isn't a good reason, and we simply need to do better for them.
The traffickers are very clever. They have a variety of methods that they use to try to get around and frustrate customs and enforcement agents. They know that the trade is illegal. They'll either try to move the birds as other contraband, or they'll try to launder them as another species of bird. The awareness of that illegality varies depending upon what stage you're at the supply chain. But there is a general awareness that it is illegal.
But the issue is not even legality. Whether legal or illegal, it is cruel and it must stop.
It's important to note that African grey parrots are not a domesticated animal. It's not like a cat or a dog, where these animals have gone through thousands of years of selective breeding to change their biology and their behaviour to cope with being in and around people's houses.
In domestic environments, these animals catch diseases. These animals are restricted, they can't move. These animals are deprived of their natural behaviours. So basically, all these are indications of their suffering.
African grey parrots are renowned for their intelligence. They're really smart animals. They have the same reasoning skills as a 3-year-old human. So that alone highlights the impossible task that's put before a pet owner in meeting the psychological needs of these animals. They're not evolved to live in a person's living room. They need to be able to fly, they need to live in large flocks, they need to be able to forage, they need the diversity of activities that they have in a natural habitat. Keeping them on their own in solitary confinement, in the confines of a living room, it's just not the way these animals are meant to live. The only way the full needs of an African grey parrot can be made from a welfare perspective is in their natural environment, in the wild, where they belong.
What I think people can do to help is simply to not buy an exotic pet. We're asking people to think twice before you make your purchase. We really want people to get educated and to understand why it's unacceptable to own an exotic pet or a wild animal as a pet. And really, wild animals belong in the wild, and together we can work to make that happen.
As public, we have a role. Me and you, we have a role. Educate your neighbor, educate other people. Spread the news. These animals belong in the wild. They are not meant for domestic environments. For us, that is the gospel that we teach, and would like the public to do the same.